When people talk about legendary motorcycles from the 1980s, names like the Kawasaki Ninja 900R, Suzuki GSXR750, or Honda VFR 750F usually come to mind. But beyond those iconic beasts lies a hidden world of machines that were just as wild, powerful, and groundbreaking, yet far less known. These were bikes ahead of their time, pushing the limits of technology or simply too weird for the market to accept. Some were forgotten, underrated, or produced in ultra-limited numbers, but for true enthusiasts, they are hidden treasures waiting to be rediscovered. In this video, we'll explore 10 legendary motorcycles from the 1980s that you probably never heard about, but once you do, you won't forget them. 1983. Honda CX650 Turbo. When Honda launched the CX650 Turbo in 1983, they weren't just building a motorcycle, they were trying to reshape the future. The CX650 Turbo was the world's first mass-produced turbocharged bike that was actually smooth and reliable enough for daily use. With its 674 cubic centimeter V-twin engine, electronic fuel injection, turbocharging, and digital engine management, it was a technical leap forward. It packed serious punch, around 100 horsepower, at a time when most middleweight sport bikes delivered just 60 to 70 horsepower. Honda boldly proclaimed it the motorcycle of the future. But the problem was, the future came too soon. Riders in the early 80s weren't ready for a turbo bike with complex electronics and a price tag nearly double that of other 650cc machines. The CX650 Turbo was seen as too much, too early, and was discontinued after just 1 year. Only about 1,700 units were ever produced worldwide, making it a rare collector's gem. Today, the CX650 Turbo stands as a symbol of boldness, when Honda dared to leap ahead of its time, even at the cost of commercial failure. 1985. Suzuki RG500 Gamma. The Suzuki RG500 Gamma was no ordinary motorcycle. It was a two-stroke beast, born on the racetrack and packaged for the street. Introduced in 1985, the RG500 was a direct street-legal version of the legendary Suzuki RG Gamma that dominated the 500cc Grand Prix racing scene. At its heart was a square-four 498 cubic centimeter two-stroke engine, producing up to 95 horsepower, packed into a chassis that weighed just about 340 pounds. Its power-to-weight ratio rivaled many supercars of the era. It wheelied under throttle and carved corners like a scalpel, an absolute dream or nightmare, depending on your skill. Sadly, the RG500 Gamma was never officially sold in the United States, limited instead to Europe, Canada, and a few select markets. That made it a forgotten legend to many American riders. Today, finding a stock RG500 Gamma is like uncovering a hidden treasure. 1984. Yamaha RZ500. The RZ500 was Yamaha's direct answer to the dominance of the Suzuki RG500 Gamma, and it held nothing back. Released in 1984, the RZ500 was a two-stroke, 499 cubic centimeter V4 powered beast, derived directly from Yamaha's YZR500 GP racer, once ridden by Kenny Roberts. Producing around 88 to 90 horsepower and weighing approximately 430 pounds dry, the RZ500 wasn't as brutally fast as the RG500, but it had a character all its own, a snarling V4 engine note, sudden bursts of power, and razor-sharp throttle response. It delivered a wild riding experience that few four-stroke bikes of the era could replicate. However, like the RG500, the RZ500 was never officially sold in the US, due in part to emissions and safety regulations. That made it something of a grey market legend, known and coveted only by true enthusiasts. Today, the Yamaha RZ500 stands as a symbol of an era when two-stroke motorcycles were still allowed to howl on public roads, untamed, unapologetic, and unforgettable. 1984. Bimota KB2 Laser. If you've never heard of the Bimota KB2 Laser, you're not alone. Bimota was never a mass-market brand. But among performance and engineering purists, the KB2 is regarded as one of the rare, rideable works of art to come out of Italy. Debuting in the early 1980s, the Bimota KB2 was powered by a 550cc inline-4 engine sourced from the Kawasaki Z13000. But the real magic was in the frame, a precision-engineered steel trellis chassis crafted by none other than Massimo Tamburini, who would later create the legendary Ducati 916. The entire bike weighed just about 330 pounds, making it incredibly nimble and razor-sharp in its handling. With only around 55 horsepower, it didn't rely on brute power. Instead, the KB2 delivered near telepathic riding feel, as if the bike responded to your thoughts. Only 177 kilobyte 2 lasers were ever built, making it one of the rarest Bimotas in existence. 1985. Honda NS400R. Launched in 1985, the NS400R was inspired by the NS500 that Freddie Spencer rode to a MotoGP world title in 1983. But instead of a four-cylinder engine like its rivals, the NS400R used a unique V3 two-stroke engine, displacing 387 cubic centimeters and producing around 72 horsepower at high RPMs. Weighing just about 360 pounds, it delivered incredibly nimble and predictable handling, very different from the wild, unpredictable nature of RG500s or RZ500s. More than just a street machine, the NS400R was a technical marvel, featuring Honda's ATAC exhaust valve system, anti-dive front forks, dual front disc brakes, and a lightweight alloy frame. This was Honda at its boldest, creating something not for the masses, but for those who understood. Unfortunately, the NS400R wasn't a commercial hit. Buyers wanted bigger and faster, while this bike focused on finesse and engineering. Only a few thousand were made over 2 years, primarily for Europe, Canada, and Japan. 1989. Yamaha SRX600. In an era when manufacturers were chasing multi-cylinder engines, fuel injection, and futuristic sport bike designs, the Yamaha SRX600 went the other way. Simple, light, and classically pure. Launched in 1985, the SRX600 was powered by a 608 cubic centimeter air-cooled single-cylinder engine with a single overhead cam and a 5-speed gearbox. No turbo, no flashy electronics, just pure mechanical soul. It made about 45 horsepower, but the entire bike weighed only around 370 pounds, making it incredibly nimble and fun to ride. Its styling echoed classic cafe races: slim fuel tank, solo seat, exposed tubular steel frame, and wire-spoked wheels. This was a bike built for those who loved the riding experience, not just spec sheets. Despite critical praise, the SRX600 failed commercially. Buyers at the time wanted more power, more tech, more flash. SRX600 faded into obscurity and was discontinued after just a few years. But today, the SRX600 is making a quiet comeback among vintage motorcycle lovers as a symbol of minimalist design, ease of maintenance, and raw rider-machine connection. 1988 Kawasaki Z13000. When the Kawasaki Z13000 debuted in late 1978, the motorcycle world was stunned. At a time when four-cylinder engines were considered the peak of performance, Kawasaki unleashed a monster with a 1,286 cubic centimeter inline-six engine, water-cooled, a bold and borderline insane move. Weighing nearly 700 pounds, producing around 120 horsepower, and capable of exceeding 130 miles per hour, the Z1300 was an engineering marvel. But it wasn't just powerful, it was unbelievably smooth. The six-cylinder engine delivered buttery performance with virtually no vibration, like gliding on a perfectly machined block of metal. However, the Z1300 wasn't for everyone. It was heavy, fuel-thirsty, and expensive to maintain. Its sheer size and complexity made it difficult to use as a daily rider. Even with later upgrades like fuel injection, the Z1300 remained a bike for the truly brave and deeply passionate. 1983 Lavada RGS1000 Lavada, a name you may not have heard much about. A small Italian motorcycle manufacturer, Lavada once produced a truly unique sport tourer, the RGS1000. Introduced in 1982, the RGS1000 was equipped with a 981 cubic centimeter air-cooled inline triple, producing around 83 horsepower. This engine wasn't just reliable, it also delivered a deep, resonant exhaust note that many enthusiasts have described as the classic growl of old-school Italy. But the RGS's most distinctive feature lay in its design. A modern, sport touring bike with fully integrated bodywork, built-in panniers, a sunken fuel tank, and a raised tail section, all combining for aerodynamic efficiency and elegant aesthetics. Lavada set out to build a sport tourer for the Italian gentleman, and they succeeded. However, due to its high price, limited production, and lack of strong distribution channels, the RGS1000 failed commercially. At a time when Japanese brands were dominating with new technology and affordable pricing, a boutique Italian machine like the RGS simply couldn't keep up. Today, the RGS1000 is highly sought after by collectors, not only for its uniqueness, but also because it represents the final great chapter in Lavada's story, before the brand quietly disappeared from the global motorcycle map. 1985 Kajjiva Aladzura 650. The Kajjiva Aladzura 650 is one of the rare motorcycles that blended traditional Italian engineering with clever rebranding during a turbulent time for the European motorcycle industry. Released in 1985, the Aladzura 650 was essentially a refined version of the Ducati Panther 600, reintroduced under the Kajjiva name after the company acquired Ducati in the early 1980s. It used a 647 cubic centimeter air-cooled V-twin with belt-driven cams, a pioneering Ducati innovation at the time. Producing around 55 horsepower, it paired with a lightweight trellis frame to offer balanced performance and agile handling on mountain roads, tight city streets, or the open highway. Design-wise, the Aladzura was unmistakably Italian, sleek, understated, and elegant. It wasn't as aggressive-looking as Japanese superbikes of the time, but it exuded a classic charm, often overlooked in the horsepower wars. However, in markets like the US, Kajjiva was a largely unknown name, and the Aladzura was quickly overshadowed by newer, flashier Japanese sport bikes. But for those in the know, it was a hidden Ducati, offering a true Italian riding experience at a fraction of the cost. 1989. Norton F1. Released in 1989, the Norton F1 was the street-legal version of the RCW 588 race bike that conquered the legendary Isle of Man TT, where speed and bravery rule the road. Its liquid-cooled 588 cubic centimeter twin-rotor Wankel engine produced up to 95 horsepower. But what truly set it apart was the experience. Crisp throttle response, a hypnotic rotary whine, and smooth, pistonless acceleration like nothing else. The design was just as bold. A sleek, aerodynamic fairing, black and yellow racing livery, and a lightweight chassis. The F1 wasn't just a sport bike. It was a technical statement from a struggling British industry fighting to stay relevant. However, Norton built only about 140 units, primarily to meet homologation requirements for racing. Its high price, limited availability, and complex maintenance made it a rare collectible from day one. Today, the Norton F1 stands as an icon of daring engineering and creativity, one of the strangest, most distinctive sport bikes the 1980s ever produced. The 1980s were a time when motorcycle manufacturers dared to experiment with the wildest ideas, from rotary engines and turbocharging to lightweight frames and ahead-of-its-time designs. Many of the bikes featured today may have been buried by time, but they were far from ordinary. Each one is a product of passion, innovation, and the courage to be different. And it is that uniqueness that made them legendary. Have you ever heard of or seen any of these bikes in person? Which 1980s motorcycle do you think is the most underrated? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with fellow classic bike lovers. And if you enjoy hidden stories from the world of two wheels, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and discover more forgotten legends.